So this was the lesson that I literally just finished. Charcoal, basically, and I'm strangely enough, I'm going to try these. This was the second one of yesterday. The one about addiction, that one. That's how it turned out. So I'm talking to Eric Jackson and about. I found a decent. Let me show you. I think this is it. Charcoal pencil. Don't ask me where I find these things. They're always just in a pot, because we've got hundreds over the years. You gather these things, don't you? Pencils, and found that and said, "Was there any more?" And he couldn't find one. And came back with these things. These, I think they're hard pastels. They're a bit charcoaly. They're not graphite. They're too soft for graphite. So I thought, we'll have a go with these. So this is the cheapest of the cheapest paper. the cheaper of the cheaper paper that I use. This is the supermarket paper, and I've got a bog standard image. Why risk it? These are the staples. And I said many times, charcoal artists tend to draw bearded people, bearded men, old men, for a reason, easier, forgiving, shall we say. So I thought that I'd see what these things do. Never used these before. They're a bit. At this point, it's a graphite. You can see it, can't you? Well, you can't, in fact. Anyway, it's let's say it's graphite. I'm not putting any pressure on this at all. It's graphite-like. It's not at all what charcoal does. This is the thing about charcoal, and I try and explain this. What the lesson was about this morning, about the almost doing it for you kind of thing with the charcoal. It makes marks that are helpful, shall we say? They're part of because of its inconsistency and line variancy and all that sort of thing. It's not. It picks up on every undulation of every mark. So if you're adopting the attack velocity and pressure, you have to do it deliberately with this. You see those like say a lie detector type of thing, but it picks up on every fluctuation in someone's tone, and it actually reacts to that. Charcoal does that. Charcoal's like a lie detector. So it as it glides across every emotional and neurological response that you make to your subject is transmitted through that. And more sensitive the needle, the end of it is, the more responsive and more detailed in a kind of depth, in its depth, because of the sensitivity of the charcoal. Anything that, like I was talking about the oil pastels this morning, anything like that is always going to need deliberate intention, more pressure, more. And to a lot of people, that's okay. I mean, that is okay to apply. To work like that, to actually develop the mark making abilities, if you know what I mean. But the thing about charcoal is that it does a lot of that stuff without the effort. So why wouldn't you want that? Why would you want to get to a point where I'm not applying enough pressure on this, and therefore I'm going to do it? You know what I mean? The charcoal is doing it for you, and the difference is this: the depth that it creates. You know, the depth of the subtlety of the marks that it creates without any effort. That's kind of what you want. You want it to do it without the conscious deliberation. The main thrust of it this morning was about thinking. So if you're thinking too much because I can press a bit hard on that bit and press a bit, and do this way and all. If you're doing all that kind of stuff, you're not doing what you should be doing, which is focusing on your response. This is not, and as I said, it becomes all about the doing and nothing else. So, and ultimately, then it becomes about what people call style and technique, and then you assess on that, or you assess your outcome on that, and it's whether or not you like the technique, the way it worked out. And often techniques are masking failure, masking the failure to be pure in your mark and in the intentions. So you get into this habit of using a style as a facade for your lack of ability to connect to your subject in an honest and pure way. So, and I suppose that's why I like charcoal so much, because it does that. Because it allows that pure and honest response to manifest with little or no effort, with no sort of consideration of things. I mean, obviously you've got to get your head right. You've got to be, you've got to understand about your reasons and all the rest of it, and how to go about doing this, what's important, what's not important, all that kind of stuff. And as you're doing that, you don't want the medium to get in the way of all that complication, because it is complication. So, but yeah, this is just a drawing thing. There's a lot of effort required to make the marks darker. So consequently, it's going to be a drawing. Not going to be much of it in terms of serendipitous, because everything I'll do with this will be deliberate. That's the thing. And I think one of the things that is that I like about charcoal is that some of it is not deliberate. Some of it I didn't intend to make, and that's back to the famous quote, whoever said that, or whichever artist said that, about the best marks he ever made were the ones he didn't intend to make. That one. You're never going to experience that if it's a full control. This is the dilemma that you're faced with the general attitude to this is that it's a skill, it's a production technique, and you need to know all these things. There's no room for serendipity in that. There's no room for happy accidents. There is when people consider it as more of a contemporary thing, and that you do get people that do that, but a lot of them, it's not in the process of the drawing or the doing. A lot of them, the serendipitous things that you see people doing is they'll just throw watercolor on the background, or some excuse me, some crazy sort of odd marks, and that's what they consider to be the serendipitous. But the serendipity should happen during the process of doing this. This is when you want the what this is doing now. This is when you want this the marks to be, let's say, happy accidents. But yeah, these are not for they're not like charcoal. With these, they're not going to be mean, they're not even as good as just straight oil pastels. You know, just drawing with an oil pastel, because of the amount of pressure required to increase the tones. So now I've got to make these darker. I've really got to apply pressure. And the one thing you've got to watch out for is that if it goes black too soon, as it is doing now, that suddenly I've got there's a discrepancy in my visual comparison, my visual accuracy, because that there, right, is throwing the assessment of everything else. So all of a sudden I need to start to think about the tonal levels of everything. So it's just marks at this point. It's not a case of, it can just be a line that can throw out everything out. So it's not a case of the tones being wrong at this point. It's the lines have tonal value, and they can misdirect the eye. They can misdirect the, you know, how you measure things. I've said this before about the, you know, the phone camera and the autofocus, and how the sun can throw the values out as it takes a reading from the sun rather than the foreground, and all of a sudden the foreground's bleached out. That kind of thing. That's what happens with if you allow like this stuff. These are not good. Don't try and draw with these, by the way. These are, as these are shaping up now, I would not advise anybody. If you want to draw and don't want the medium to become the obstacle to try to overcome, don't use these. You want to use really seriously. You want to be using charcoal. These things are pretty useless, really. They're not. You know, it becomes about the thing. That's what it is. It's because it becomes about the tool, and whether or not I can get it to do what I want it to do. That's what it becomes. I don't think they smudge either, so I've got to be careful not to if I want to do anything like that, I'm not going to be able to do it. So because the other thing is, these might not be very good dry pastels, so hard pastels. So that would be another contributing factor. But I don't think I'll be rushing out to get somebody to find out whether I'm wrong or not. Yeah. See, the other thing about them is that one of the things that I don't like, but people do like, the hatching side of things. If I've got to make marks deliberately, you know, in a way to create some kind of evenness of something, it just reminds me of the felt pen thing. You know, when I used to talk about I have talked about the using magic markers in order to get them to bleed in a certain direction, you know, because the spirit would just create a strange, you know, the spirits in the magic marker would create a strange fringing if you weren't careful about the way that you made marks and so on and so forth. And when I've got to do that, as opposed to just drawing and like this morning, you know, applying the tones. I'm going to think about it there. I can just apply a large. This is work. This requires work to do that, and it's possible. I mean, a lot of people wouldn't mind that, or wouldn't even think about that as a problem, you know. Probably it wouldn't even consider that it's the thing they need to fix. You know, that's one of the problems that a lot of people have, is that they think it's them. You know, it's not the medium, it's them. No, more often than not, it's the medium. Some people suit certain mediums and some people don't. You know, it's the pencil and paint kind of thing. You know, I think that one of the things I would say is that there is a control aspect to this, so there is more control over this than if it was charcoal. Charcoal is not a control medium. If you try and control charcoal, then you're always going to struggle. It's not one of those kind of mediums that allows for, well, it does, but if you are trying to control it, you're not using charcoal properly. It does so much more than your sort of graphite kind of approach to things. If you want control, the graphite is the way to do it, because you know, you're in full control of it all. You know, not only the precision of things, but the tonal development of things, which is kind of what's happening with this. It's so I can't rub out from this. This thing won't rub out. So every mark that's on there has to be lived with, basically. It's not going to allow me to fix it. That's interesting there. So when I talk about tonal balance, right, as I start to increase the tonality of things, the shapes within them, look how the form is starting to visualize, starting to manifest. This is not about the accuracy of outlines or shapes or whatever, but look how that eye starts to formulate as I work on the balance of the tones. And with this thing, what it is just, there's no smudging, no blending, but there is lots of hatching, if you like. I know my hatching technique's just random, but it's still strangely enough, it's even in its randomness. It's like that's the old, as I say, the old visualizer habit of making the lines fit with each other. You know, that sort of, you know, we're talking about the painter and decorator infinity loop thing. It's kind of like that, but this is not it's more. I mean, an infinity loop is just to make sure that there's never a wet edge. But this kind of thing is a little bit more considered to the excuse me, relevant to the time, relevant to the moment. So it's the way, the direction, and all the rest of it will probably be more to do with the thing, the drawing, the subject, than it is to do with whether that's a technique that I'd always apply. Because the undulations in tonality will be peculiar to everything, won't they? This will have its own tonality, if you like, and you'll respond accordingly. So, as I said, it's you can see how the evenness of things, even though they're not accurate, you can see how the evenness of things is kind of leveled out by, not quite blended, by to manage lines or manage marks in order for them to cumulatively affect the tone. Again, that's how you describe hatching as a cumulative approach to tonal rendering. Of course, there's no point on this, so there's no way of getting it exactly where you want it to be. So there's a little bit of there or thereabouts about it. I suppose I could sharpen it. I'm going to sharpen it when I get a bit further on with it. I might sharpen it and see whether or not it improves it. Like I say, I wouldn't advise people to use these if they wanted a more fluid and uncontrolled almost outcome. This is this is all about control, and I think this is probably as much about proper drawing skills. I don't mean drawing as in that usual sort of box of squares in perspective and all that kind of thing. Be careful with that stuff as well. That it's one of those things where they're all useful, but they shouldn't be determining what you are. The understanding perspective, 3-point perspective, all that kind of stuff. Drawing things from your head, drawing cityscapes or whatever, maybe you need to draw that, you need to know that sort of stuff. But generally speaking, I'd say stick to drawing what you see. If things get smaller as they get further away, pretty much that's what's going to happen. That's perspective. You don't need to know any more than that. You don't need to be putting points on things and drawing blocks floating around, unless you're drawing, as I say, drawing scenes. But if you're drawing scenes like that, just get a computer. Just get Blender. Do it in Blender if that's what you want to do. But this idea that you need to know about perspective, and you don't, and that's somebody who spent a long time doing it from when I was 14. But notice how they don't explain what ellipses are, these guys. How an ellipse is made, how that is made. It's just simply, you see in relation to the vanishing points. Consider it. Consider the ellipse and what's happened, or the circle that's become, looked at in 3 dimensions. Just consider that. It's not. I see that straight on. That's a circle. But as it turns, look at it. It's an ellipse now. It's a bunch of ellipses. But you can see that, can't you? You can see that. You don't need to map that out. Look at all the alignments of things that you can see there. That's very rare that they always do boxes, don't they? Sometimes there are spheres, but a sphere in perspective is defined by shadow and shading. But look at that. That becomes an ellipse. But look at it. You don't have to know where those vanishing points are. There's all kinds of alignments that you could make with that, but it's not. You know what I mean? It's not difficult to do that. And so, up until the point I went and did technical illustration, I was doing it anyway. I didn't know I was doing it, but I was doing that. And as soon as I went and did the course, somebody said, "Oh, you're already doing it," which is why when I did the exam, and it was technical, it was engineering drawing. So I was drawing cut open gearboxes and stuff. So when I did the exam, I used a bit of trammel. If you look that up, and you'll see what a trammel method is to create an ellipse in a circle in 3 dimensions. But essentially, I did it all freehand. I did it freehand because I can see, and that, as I said, is the basics of drawing. I suppose is the learn to see. So anyway, so these are a bit, they're all right, but they're not. It's not great. As I say, you can see it's a drawing. It's not hard to draw with anything, but if you say this drawing skill thing, but if you want to draw and get better results, and pleasing results, then choose something that's going to be more conducive to your, to the act of doing it, rather than it being I've got to learn to use the device, something like pens, dip pens and stuff like that. There's an obstacle to overcome. There's a learning curve to overcome. But you got to first learn to use the device before you can do it. As I said, I'm not sure that I'm going to end up sharpening this, but what I'm going to do is focus a little bit more on the shape definition. The problem is that it builds up as well. You can see it doing there. If it builds up too much, I don't think I can rub it out to take away the build up. But yeah, I think that what I've got to do now is just work on this, the tonal side of things. As I say, I'm doing them in different directions in order to make it. You see, it seems a bit more even, and then this gradual blend here that's occurring there. There's a little bit coming down here as well. Yeah, they're okay. I would say don't start here. If you want to start with the charcoal, start with something that's going to give you a bit more, a bit better outcome, and then gradually work. I do think you should draw with other things. Not just draw with one medium, but start with the easy ones. I even say that charcoal pencils are easier than this. Yeah, right. Apart from, I'm going to just get the balance of things right. I'll get rid of that. There's too much of a highlight there. That apart from getting, let's say, the balance of things right, and just a slight tweak on the the width of things, I think that's about done. But interesting. I won't be doing any more with this thing. That's the outcome. So that probably speaks volumes. Yeah. So I'll see you later. I'm gonna do a few more later, but as I say, it won't be this thing. It'll be back on the charcoal. Right. Still, it's not bad, but as I said, not ideal.